Alright, in this section we're going to look at operations with signed numbers. This comes from problems 33 through 45 on the final review. Okay, so let's start with some basic operations. Remember that when adding two numbers with same signs, we add and keep the sign. And when adding two numbers with different signs, we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So if we look at problem 33, we have 5 plus negative 3 plus 8 plus negative 7. You can combine this any way you want to. I'm going to go ahead and combine my positive numbers. We get 5 plus 8 is 13. And I'm going to combine my negative numbers. Negative 3 and negative 7 combine to give me negative 10. We add and keep the sign. Alright, now if we combine these two numbers, we have different signs, so we are going to subtract. 13 minus 10 is 3. We keep the sign of the larger number, which is the positive, so our answer will be positive 3. For problem 34, remember when you see minus a negative, you want to change to plus a positive. So the first thing I'm going to do is change my minus to negative to plus 10. We get 6 plus 10 is 16. For 35, the first thing that we want to do is multiply disregarding signs. So we get 3 times 3 is 9. 7 times 2 is 14. I'm going to disregard the negatives for now. And if we multiply 14 times 9, we get 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 3 is 126. So disregarding the signs, we have 126. To determine the sign of our answer, we want to figure out how many negatives are in the problem. If there is an even number of negatives, the result is positive. If there is an odd number of negatives, the result is negative. We have 3 negatives here, which is odd, so my answer will be negative. Remember, the other thing you can do is you can pair them off. Remember, 2 negatives equal a positive. We have 1 negative left over, and so my answer will be negative. Alright, let's look at some problems involving fractions. So remember that when we talk about adding fractions, adding and subtracting, we want to rewrite with the LCD. From there, we're going to determine the sign, which we discussed in the previous slide. If same signs, we add the tops and keep the same sign. If different signs, we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. We keep the same bottom and simplify if possible. So if we look at 36, my LCD is 16. The first fraction, to get from 8 to 16, we multiply by 2. And whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. Make sure that you keep the negative sign. So we get negative 6 over 8, over 16 plus 11 over 16. If we combine, we get negative 6 plus 11. We have different signs, so we are going to subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, it's going to stay positive. and we keep the bottom. Can it simplify? The answer is no, and so 5/16 is our final answer. For 37, we have subtract and simplify. Again, we want our LCD. The smallest number that is divisible by 6 and 4 is 12. So the first fraction I'm going to multiply by 2. The second fraction I'm going to multiply by 3. So we get negative 10 over 12 minus 9 over 12. Remember that when we subtract, we want to think of this subtract as not a subtraction, but as a negative paired with the number. So when we look at this, we have negative 10 over 12 and negative 9 over 12. So we do have same signs here. That means we're going to add, keep the sign, and we get negative 19 over 12. Remember that we do not need to write as a mixed number. Can I simplify? The answer is no, so we will go ahead and leave it as negative 19 over 12. All right, last problem. We have subtract and simplify. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my minus and negative. This becomes 2/3 minus 4/5. My LCD, the smallest number divisible by 3 and 5 is 15. First fraction, I'm going to multiply by 5 to get from 3 to 15. Second fraction, I'm going to multiply by 3 to get from 5 to 15. So we get 10 over 15 minus 12 over 15. To combine this, we have different signs. I have a positive 10 and a negative 12, so I'm going to subtract, keep the sign of the larger number, and keep my denominator. Can I simplify? 2 and 15 have no common factors, and so we are done. So that takes care of adding and subtracting signed fractions. All right, let's talk about multiplication and division. So if it is a division, remember that we want to do copy.flip. We want to, now that we are to multiplication, we want to cancel common factors and multiply the result straight across. To determine the sign of the answer, remember if there is an even number of negatives, the result is positive. If there is an odd number of negatives, the result is negative. So on this, one of the first things I recommend is highlight your negatives, because when we get into cancellations, they very easily can get lost in the problem. Okay, so if we look at 39, we have negative 7 over 12 times 9 over 14. So what can I cancel? 7 and 14 are both divisible by 7. If I divide 7 by 7, I get 1. If I divide 14 by 7, I get 2. 9 and 12 are both divisible by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So if we multiply straight across, we get 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 2 is 8. And we have 1 negative, so we keep it with our answer. All right, for problem 40, First thing I want to do is copy dot flip since this is a division problem. If we copy dot flip, we get negative 21 over 1 times 8 over 3. All right, we go ahead and cancel. 21 and 3 are both divisible by 3. We get 1 and 7. And that's all I can cancel out. If we multiply straight across, we get 7 times 8 is 56 over 1, or 56. We have one negative in our problem, and so we're going to keep it with our answer, and we get negative 56. All right, that takes care of our fractions. So now let's go ahead and look at a decimal problem. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the signs. Remember that if they are same signs, we are going to add. If they are different signs, we subtract. So we're going to add or subtract, disregarding the signs. Remember that since we are talking decimals, we want to line up the columns and the decimal points. So for this problem, we have negative 4.009 plus 0.73. We have different signs, so I want to think subtract. So I'm going to subtract, disregarding the signs. So I'm going to work with 4.009 minus 0.73. All right, if we go ahead and subtract, we get 9 minus nothing is 9. For the rest of this, I do need to borrow, so the 4 is going to become a 3. 0 will become a 10, which will then become a 9, so that we can get a 10 and subtract the 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 3 minus 0 is 3. We bring down our decimal point, and then I need to know the answer. I need to know the sign of my answer. So if they are different signs, we keep the sign of the larger number. My larger number is 4.009, and so my final answer will be negative 3.279. All right, let's go ahead and look at some problems involving order of operations. Remember that order of operations is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. A couple things we do want to remember is multiplication and division must be done from left to right. As we are in the section involving sign numbers, we don't have to worry about addition and subtraction being done from left to right, as long as we remember that minuses are actually signs for the numbers. Okay, so for problem 42, do we have parentheses? As we have nothing that can simplify inside the parentheses, we do not. So we're going to go ahead and move over to our exponents. We have 2 to the 4th. 2 to the 4th, what is that equal to? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2, which is our 4th 2, is 16. From here, we can go ahead and multiply and divide. We get 32 divided by 16 is 2. And then we can go ahead and add and subtract. I'm going to go ahead and combine my two negative numbers. We have negative 2 and negative 2 combined to give me negative 4. And 7 minus 4 is 3. All right, let's go ahead and look at 43. We have negative 48 divided by negative 4 squared plus 3. We do not have any parentheses in this step. We're going to go ahead and start with our exponents. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. You have negative 4 times negative 4. Your negatives are going to cancel out. From there, we can go ahead and divide. Negative 48 divided by 16 is negative 3. And then now if we add, we get negative 3 plus 3 is 0. All right, let's look at 44. We have no parentheses on this. We cannot simplify inside. The first thing that we can do is divide since we have no exponents either. So I'm going to divide 8 divided by negative 4, which gives me negative 2. And I'm going to divide negative 42 by negative 7, which gives me a plus 6. My minus becomes a plus, and my two negatives cancel out. We can now add. Negative 2 plus 6, we have different signs, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. We get positive 4. All right, last one. We got all sorts of things going on here. So the first thing we want to do is simplify inside parentheses. Since the square is actually inside parentheses, you can simplify it at this step. So I'm going to get 4 minus 3 times 3 is 9 plus 7 times 3 plus 9 is 12. And I'm going to also change my minus and negative to a plus 6. All right, we took care of our exponents already, so we are to our multiplication step. We get 4 minus 9. 7 times 12 is 84 plus 6. All right, I'm going to go ahead and combine my positive numbers together. 84 plus 6 is 90, plus 4 is 94. I'll bring down my minus 9, and 94 minus 9 is 85. And that takes care of our operations with signed numbers. In the next section, we're going to go ahead and look at Intro to Algebra.